Okay, it's 7, so we are going to go ahead and get started. I hope you have your anxiety audit. If you got this emailed to you or Facebook Messenger, then you have this in your possession, and hopefully this is going to be kind of a good reference tool for you to kind of look at. I'm not going to go through the questions individually, but I am going to be teaching through these sections, and so hopefully those questions prompted some insight into you, into what might be going on in your life a little bit. If you want to email your questions or send those in the chat, Melissa's watching, and so it's easier to do the questions as we go along, not answer them as we go along, but if you send them as we go along, if you think of them, you can put them in the discussion or message them, and Melissa will catch those and will answer those at the end. So, de-stress. So this event is meant to educate you on the stress response and understanding a little bit about the things, the areas of in your life that are contributing to the stress response, and how we are going to be able to turn that off. So I want to start just by kind of educating you a little bit about what the stress response is and just how important it is. So all of you who are tuned in here, this is a really important conversation, not only for your mental health, but your physical health and people you love. And there's not a person in the world that couldn't benefit from knowing how to have less stress in their lives. So Dr. Mark Hyman, you may be familiar with that name, you may not. He is the director of the Functional Medicine Cleveland Clinic, and he's written many times New York Times bestsellers. And recently he said, more than cigarette smoking, more than a poor diet, more than socioeconomic status, more than lack of control, and and lack of exercise, poor diet, smoking, lack of control, and socioeconomic status, stress is the #1 predictor of premature death and disease. So this is something that's really rampant in our society. We have like 45 million Americans who are suffering with anxiety, and probably far greater than that are struggling with stress. So I want to talk about the stress response. So we are talking tonight about not stressors like, you have an upcoming move or things like that. We are talking about the stress response in your body and how to get that to calm down so that you can have a calmer mind. So I want to explain that a little bit to you because whether or not it's just calming everyday stress in your life or working on anxiety or something bigger, you really need to understand what it is that we're talking about. So I have this little handy dandy brain here, and I know it's going to be hard to see, but I want to explain the stress response because it's really important to understand what happens in our brain, because a lot of times I think we think it's just a mind thing. It's really a brain thing. It's a physical thing. So when I talk about the stress response tonight, I'm going to be talking about fight or flight. Okay, this is the response when over 1,400 chemical reactions happen in our brain that tells us we need to get out of danger. So what that is the stress response is when things come in from the environment, and they come in our thalamus right here in our inner brain, takes all this information in and gets all the information to all the various parts of our brain. And tonight in this training, I'm going to be educating you about what happens in this process, how fight or flight gets turned on, and I'm going to talk about the 5 contributors. So as you went through your anxiety audit, we went through emotional regulation, trauma, body, brain, environment, lifestyle, and mindset. And I'm going to go through those areas, and I'm going to teach you how they contribute to this trauma response being turned on, because it really depends a lot on what's turning it on to figure out how to get it off. So this training is, I am a professional counselor. I'll get in a minute to my credentials a little bit, but this is not a diagnostic, so I'm not diagnosing anyone with anxiety. I'm sharing, but what I'm sharing is very clinically based, evidence-based material. These things that I'm presenting are not just my ideas or my opinions about stress. This is all very scientifically based, and so this is kind of for you to kind of walk through and open your brain about the things that might be activating your stress response. and there will be a Q&A at the very end. I mentioned that, so if you want to stay till the end, there, feel free to ask those questions, and I will be happy to answer whatever I can. So for those of you who don't know me personally, my name is Rochelle Walsh. I am a licensed therapist. I specialize in anxiety and trauma. I use brain-based strategies like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocess, to help people get through stuck places in their brain. And so I've been doing this for 20 years, and I love mental health. I love the area, I love the field, I love my clients. And so that is my professional training. I'm trained as a social worker. I have a lot of advanced training in attachment and again, trauma. And two and a half years ago, the personal part of my story and what I bring to this conversation as qualifying me to talk about this is that 2.5 years ago, our daughter, then 13, had a brain injury. And it has been, continued to be a real ordeal. And through that experience, learned a lot about brain health. And because I am a trauma therapist at the beginning of this journey, I really looked at her experience as through the lens of trauma. What is she going to be dealing with years later? All this loss, how am I coping with it? How's our family dealing with it? But as time went on and we began to search through new treatment strategies and information about how we could help her, how you go through periods of your life and you learn things that you wish you didn't have to know. But since you do have to know them and you do find them out, you just hope that it can be helpful to someone else. And that's kind of what this journey of brain health has done for us, is it really has just kind of opened our eyes to a lot of things that I was just shocked that I hadn't really heard or known about, because I do so much training and I try to stay up to date on the latest research with brain health and that sort of thing. And so to learn these things, and I had been conditioned kind of just to look at anxiety and disorders through a trauma lens, through an attachment lens, what happened in childhood, what's going on now, mindset stuff. And I really didn't understand the physical component to anxiety the way that I do now. But I remember very clearly we had gone to Austin to see a specialist, and this particular specialist was, he'd been a cranial surgeon and he specialized in biochemistry and genetics. And by the time we saw him, he was kind of like a celebrity to me, because I had listened to my husband listen to lecture after lecture by him, and I had been listening to his podcast, and we were just hoping that she could be seen. And as he's talking to me about my daughter, he's talking about the brain, and he's talking about these different regions of the brain, and all this stuff's going on in my brain, because these are areas of the brain that I work with my clients. And so he's talking about the amygdala, and he's talking about the adrenals and all of that. And so I said to him, so this low-grade inflammation you're saying, this would be true for all of my clients with chronic anxiety and PTSD and depression? And he said yes. They all have low-grade inflammation. So that was kind of a paradigm shift for me, where I started to understand really this big physical health component that goes along with anxiety. And so that's one of the things I'm going to be sharing tonight when we get to the body and the brain. But just so that you know my journey, with trauma, anxiety is my specialty, but the brain health and understanding more about the biochemistry of the brain has really been a relatively new thing. So hello, I see some people coming on later. So nice to see friendly faces, because I'm kind of nervous doing this. But so again, that's my training, that's my qualifications. Here's what we're going to go through. So first of all, let's understand what happens in your brain when we talk about the stress response. And when I say the stress response, I'm going to be using these things interchangeably. Stress response, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system. These are the responses that happen when our brain senses that we are in danger. So information comes into the thalamus. Like I said, it gets it wants to get the information all over to our brain to figure out what are we going to do with this information? What do we know about this stray dog that's approaching us or something? So it goes in the thalamus. And you'll notice, like, this is the inside of our brain, okay? This is like this lower region down here. That's our limbic brain, okay? So the information comes in here and it goes to all parts of our brain. And you'll see it's in very close proximity to the amygdala down here. Little on or off switch about the size of almonds, one on each side, and it's going to tell our brain, basically it just says on or off, dangerous or not, right? It just determines very quickly. And how our brain determines whether or not something's dangerous is by asking our hippocampus, this little guy right here, right by the amygdala, that specializes in our memory. So the hippocampus stores our memory. And so let's say we take in from the environment, like I gave the example, stray dog. And let's say the amygdala goes, oh, what do I know about stray dogs? Well, let's say that when you were young, a stray dog attacked you and bit off your lip, okay? Actually happened to somebody I know, yikes. So anyway, amygdala, information goes to hypothalamus. What do we know about stray dogs? Stray dogs bite off your lip. Amygdala says it's on, danger, danger, and it signals the hypothalamus, it sends out, our adrenal system gets engaged, our pituitary gland, and 1,400 different chemical reactions happening in your body at this time if the amygdala says it's on, okay? So we don't have, once the amygdala says it's on, there's no reasoning, okay? It does not matter if that's a cuddly little Pomeranian that can't hurt you. If your brain says it's dangerous and it's Cujo, then you're gonna have a fight or flight response. And when you have this, we know what that feels like, right? It feels like a rush, our heart starts beating, the blood flows away from our stomach, we get that pit in our stomach because the blood's going to your extremities so that you could run away from the dog. I said cholesterol dumps into our bloodstream. That's to thicken our blood so that we wouldn't bleed to death as quickly. We breathe more shallowly. We get adrenaline and cortisol and all these chemicals to help gear up. It also suppresses our immune system because when you think that you need to get away from Cujo, it doesn't really matter if you digest your lunch or if you fight off a virus. So our immune system gets suppressed because our brain wants to focus on the immediate danger, the immediate threat, so that we can get out of danger. Okay, so this is not a thought process. This is in our automatic brain, and there are thoughts down here, but it's a reaction and it's based on our memory. Because if our memory says, oh, stray dogs, I remember Fluffy, he was my favorite puppy ever, he was a stray and I found him and he was my best friend, and then our brain goes, oh, sweet little puppy, and no fight or flight response. But if a fight or flight response is activated in our lower brain, we're not thinking, so somebody telling you to calm down, or you have no reason to be afraid, or this shouldn't scare you, or why are you overreacting? It doesn't matter. It's simply a response. And so the thinking brain is up here. If it's on down here, no thinking, right? Cuts off information from. So that is the stress response I'm talking about. And this stress response, when it happens over and over again, it's not the stressors that hurt us, it's the stress response, okay? So a little bit of, if you can imagine lifting weights. We want a little bit of resistance because that builds up strength, right? So we are lifting weights, we feel a little bit sore, we try ourselves a little bit, and muscle fibers grow and we get a little bit stronger. That's how stress is. You know, we have a little bit and we handle it, and then we get a little bit stronger and we build up resilience and we build up strength. But a stress response that's turned on all the time wears down your system. It's too much. It's too much and it's too frequent. And so we get a lot of things that happen from our stress response, like hypertension and high blood pressure, gastrointestinal issues. You know, when I said that blood flows away from our stomach, what happens in our gut is that we can't digest food. We can't digest food without proper blood flow, so food just kind of sits there and ferments and we can get digestive issues. So that's basically the stress response that I'm going to be teaching on tonight. And so in each of these areas, I'm going to tell you how it gets turned on and what some specific things are that you might want to consider in getting it turned off based on where it comes from. So again, just referencing my own experience from this, you know, thinking about the brain in a way when we look at trauma and attachment and environment and someone's safety and their physical health, looking at all those things so that we can determine what the best strategy is. Because if you have someone who has a response like I just described, maybe for the dog, right? This dog scares you because we have a traumatic memory attached to that. You can do, food sensitivity testing and find out that they have a gluten insensitivity. Take the gluten away, they're still afraid of the dog. Or you can work on somebody all day long with, setting boundaries and family issues or mindset stuff. And yet, if they have a thyroid condition and you're not addressing that, you're not going to be able to turn it off. So getting successful help, getting to the other side of whatever it is that's causing anxiety, depends a lot on kind of identifying the things in here, what's causing the distress, and how do I learn how to turn that off. Some things can happen really quickly. We can change a nervous system response in a matter of minutes, but doing it repeatedly and getting brain change is really what we're after, and then having healthy brain habits, moving forward, so that we can constantly be de-stressing, because the stress won't stop, right? You can get a new job, a new husband, your kids can get better behavior, your finances can improve, all the things, but the stress they'll just keep coming. So we got to figure out how to de-stress. Anxiety is also a really good indicator. It's a really good indicator that something's going on in our brain. And again, it might be just daily stress that everybody has and just some tweaks in your lifestyle. But if it's a little bit more than that, true anxiety really is an indication of other things going on oftentimes. And so looking at it as a warning signal. So you have a warning signal going off in your car. You don't just unplug, the signal so that you no longer have to see it. What's that? Maybe I need to get something checked out here. Maybe it's something in the engine. So that's our goal for tonight, is to get you to thinking about what are the things that I need to be addressing. So let's start. The first part is emotional regulation. And this area of emotional regulation, you probably noticed on your questionnaire. Can you guys just raise your hand and let me know? Or not raise your hand, just like put up a thing if you were able to complete the questionnaire, so I know if that's, I don't know how you raise your hand. Can you put up a like or something? I don't know. Maybe that's not even possible in here. Anyway, emotional regulation. There are a lot of things that I put in the questionnaire because a lot of this happens when we're young, before we can even remember, and then continuing. Oh, yay, I see a little thumbs up. Okay. Happens when we are in childhood, because a couple things happen. One, in our attachment system, we're not going to, in all of these areas, each of these areas could be a whole talk all on their own. So I'm going to cover what I think is important to understand, and there's going to be things I leave out. But attachment theory, we know it, you probably have heard of that and how important that is. Yay. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the feedback. That helps, so I know that we're getting it. Attachment is like, do we have a safe caregiver there? Our primary safety need is to know that we can be cared for, right? Our very biology depends on the fact that I'm young, I'm vulnerable, I look at you, adult, caring for me, and I need to know that you're going to take care of me. And if not, I'm terrified because I don't know any other way to survive in the world. I can't change my diaper, I can't get food on my own, so I need you to take care of me. And so that's our base level of safety, is developed in like 0 to 6 months, learning trust with the caregiver, that they'll pick us up, that they'll change us, that they'll be there for us. So that is attachment. But the other thing kids can't do, even after they can walk and they can talk, is children are not able to regulate their own emotions. They're not developed. It doesn't matter how smart they are. It doesn't matter how good of a parent you've been. Kids are unable to regulate themselves. It is an unfair expectation because their mind has not developed that ability yet to regulate their own emotions. So when we say to our kids, just calm down, they really can't. And I've said that many times. I know that we do say that, but they really can't regulate their own emotions. So how this happens is they have an attachment cry. So they get upset and they look at us, and basically they're looking at the parent to say, can you help me calm myself down? And if the adult can stay calm and look at them, so I always give this example, it's a silly one, but you know how kids get upset about really, really seemingly small things. Has anybody else ever had that experience that their kids get upset about small things? So let's say that the cookie breaks in half, right? And it was the last cookie and they didn't want it to break in half. They're a little toddler and they start crying because now the cookie's broken and they can't eat it because it's broken and they really wanted it in one piece. Okay, so in that experience, the child is overwhelmed and they are going to be upset. And so if we help them regulate, we say, I know that's upset. If we say that's, right, if we dismiss it, if we just say, that's ridiculous, it's going to taste exactly the same, and we're tempted to do that because it's logic, right? But if we say that, we're giving them a left brain argument. And emotion, negative emotion, is in our right brain. So that left brain argument is going to just intensify their distress. If we shame them, if we say boys shouldn't cry, you're being a baby, why are you making such a big deal over this? Then, they feel shamed and their distress goes up. But co-regulation looks like identifying that emotion in the child, saying, I see you're really upset. I know, that's a bummer. And then, so we calm with the right by identifying the right brain and kind of mirroring those mirror neurons in a calm state. And then the child regulates to us. It's called co-regulation. So if the adult is calm and regulated enough, the child, through mirror neurons, they learn to regulate and they develop good, what we call vagal tone, okay? Vagal tone is this vagus nerve goes from your brain all the way down through your gut, and it helps regulate all the automatic processes in our body. And so kids learn this kind of co-regulation. They learn my emotions are okay. They look at the adult is calm. Because the adult is calm, they go, okay, the adults have got it under control. I can calm down. So we learn this very young. We also learn when it's not okay to have emotions. Maybe we get shamed. Maybe we're dismissed. I mentioned those two. And maybe we're just not seen. So sometimes through no fault of the parent, I shouldn't say no intentionality from the parent or no malice from the parent. Sometimes that parent's very distracted. Maybe they're working 2 jobs. Maybe dad was just deployed. Maybe they just found out somebody they love has cancer and are dying and they're depressed. Maybe they're overwhelmed themselves. Sometimes the adults are not as emotionally present as they would like to be with the kids, and the kid feels unseen. And when kids are unable to be helped with their emotion, when that co-regulation doesn't happen, emotions become terrifying, okay? So they learn to do things. The only way a baby can regulate is to look away. Have you seen that? Your babies get overstimulated and they start looking away. Can adults co-regulate with other adults through mirror neurons? Yes, they can. That's a great question, Sarah. Somebody just asked a question, can adults co-regulate with other adults through mirror neurons too? Yes. But in calming our own system and understanding where that comes from, we basically, this is going to follow into what I'm talking about. When kids, so that's a great question. I think it's going to be answered here in just a second. When kids are learning to regulate their own emotions, they're co-regulating with the adults. When they're co-regulating with adults, they develop a part of themselves that has compassion toward their own emotions. So when the kid is helped by the parent when it's age appropriate to regulate their emotions, they learn to label their emotions, they learn strategies, they learn to calm, and so they can tolerate being sad, they can tolerate being overwhelmed. They're not ashamed of their tears, they're not afraid of their grief, they're not taken back by experiencing some fear. But when kids are in childhood, when they're not helped to co-regulate, what happens is they don't develop the safety around emotions that they need. So that's where this piece ties into anxiety, because a lot of anxiety in adulthood comes from not having co-regulation as a child, and now because of that, the feelings, the emotions themselves are overwhelming. So this goes into what we call ego state work. I don't have time to teach on all of this tonight, but that's why a lot of inner child work and things like that are very helpful for anxiety, because a lot of times anxiety is based around avoidance. I'm going to avoid people, places, or things that cause me fear. I'm going to avoid my emotions and keep busy and distract. I'm going to try to maybe control situations or control what other people say or do because I might feel scared or they might get sick and I couldn't handle it if they got sick. So it leads us into a lot of overdrive trying to manage things in our life so that we don't feel the fear. Or the emotion comes up, the sadness comes up, something is activated in us, and just being activated feels so uncomfortable because we weren't helped with it, that we don't know how to identify it in our body, we don't know how to label it, and we don't know how to calm it. So when we start to notice body sensations, we start to be able to look at the meaning, we develop self-compassion, then we see anxiety go down a lot when we can handle the emotional stuff. So does that, I hope that makes sense. We also you might find that it's difficult to set boundaries. If you lacked co-regulation as a child, it also might be that you have a hard time getting back to normal. Sometimes people that have a really activated fear response, like something comes in and we're never going to our brain is designed to keep us safe and to have this stress response when there's something dangerous. So we're never going to not respond to a stress response. But kind of the key is, how do we get back to normal? How quickly do we get back to normal? So calming rather than avoiding or distracting, letting ourselves cry. Tears release cortisol and really calm our system. So that's key, is being able to let yourself go into and move through those emotional experiences really does a lot to be able to relieve anxiety. The next area is trauma and PTSD, and PTSD can come from some of these lack of co-regulation that I talked about, but it can also be a little bit different. And so I want to just give you this story to illustrate. So when I went to an EMDR training, my first one, they pair us up. It's like a 3-day training, and you're supposed to work on something with a partner that's relatively small, right? They say like a 0 is no distress and a 10's the most. So my partner, we're supposed to pick something like a 2 or 3 because we don't know what we're doing, right? So we have to learn to practice on each other. And so I get paired with this girl, Janelle, and she says, well, my thing is that I get really anxious when I get ready to go out of town, like coming to this training. Like I feel so nervous packing, I'm jittery, it just takes me a while to settle in. I mean, it's really hard on me to leave, and I don't really understand why I'm so scared. Like I know my kids are taken care of. I don't understand why it's so scary. So we start doing this, and we go through questions like, well, what does it mean for you to leave? And when was and really get into the sensation. What does it feel like when you get ready to leave, right? And so she accesses it. It feels like this. And then they're like, okay, what is the first or worst time you ever felt that way? Now, Janelle did not have this lack of co-regulation, right? So she didn't know where this comes from. And so we activate it though. What's it feel like when you get ready to leave? And what's in your memory? When was the first or worst time that this happened to you? And she said, well, when I was 11. My parents had divorced. My dad was living in California, mom living in South Dakota, and I flew to see my dad. And as I got there, my dad and brother were in California, and I got off the plane. All our family was standing there, my dad's family, and they told me that my dad and my brother had been killed in a car accident that day. So then all the emotion comes, and I don't know what I'm doing, but we worked through it, and we're still really good friends. And it really helped her. So we did EMDR, and we resolved that trauma. So that is an example of how, she didn't recognize, because that happened when she was 11, and we're talking she was in her mid to late 30s at the time. And so she had an anxiety, and she didn't realize that there was this trauma stored that really was activating an anxious response around this one activity. So sometimes we have good co-regulation. We have emotional regulation. I mean, she has very good emotional regulation, but she had a trauma, and there was an isolated trauma there that was activating anxiety. She didn't have intrusive thoughts. She didn't have PTSD symptoms, but she had a trauma that was related to her anxiety. right? Which is different. PTSD, she would have had nightmares, intrusive thoughts, emotional flashbacks all the time, real avoidance behavior. She just had an anxiety, but it was definitely a trauma. And when she worked through that trauma, we continued to go to trainings. We meet in Omaha. It's awesome. And so that's a good example to illustrate how a trauma can really create anxiety, because it's stored in the memory, and sometimes it's in our memory at a place where it's not easily retrieved. And so we'll talk about that later when we talk about mindset. But memories are stored in the hippocampus, like I said, and millions of moments aren't remembered on a conscious level. Our brain kind of does this really neat thing where it goes, okay, you don't need that, you don't need that. It's kind of like cleaning out your closet every couple days. Your brain goes, oh yeah, you don't need that information, not relevant, and it keeps the ones that have emotions tied, especially the ones that are tied to fear. Because if our brain says you're afraid of this, it could kill you, you need to hold on to this, you need to remember so that you can prevent that. So every time she'd get ready to go to leave, right, out of town, her brain would tell her, this is dangerous, something bad could happen, you could die, somebody else could die, but she wasn't conscious of that. It was a memory stored, and she knew the memory was there, but she didn't realize the impact that it was having. So also stored in the memory are cognitions about self. So I just gave the example of one I'm not safe, but it could also be I'm not good enough. It could be, I'm responsible. I need to please everyone. I have to be perfect all the time. So our memory holds a lot of messages that we took from our environments and thoughts about self. And sometimes those memories or thoughts about self get activated, and when they're related to a trauma, we can be really overwhelmed by it. Some things you might want to look for with trauma are, do you have real strong avoidance behaviors of certain activities? Do you get nightmares? Do you get flashbacks? When you think about that particular time, does it feel like reliving rather than remembering? Because if we pull out a memory, if I say, I remember moving in the 3rd grade and I was so sad and I cried and I left my best friend, but as I'm telling that story, my body is clear, I don't feel anything, then I'm remembering. If I start remembering moving or and I all of a sudden, my head hurts and my neck's tight and I don't want to think about it and I have to change the subject, or I start to cry, or if I really feel the activation of that, that's reliving. That is a memory that's not properly stored. Cognitive therapy, talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, what are your thoughts about that, are ineffective with trauma. Just want to say some things about trauma. I love dealing with trauma. Here's some things you can do. Cognitive therapy is not helpful. You can talk about your trauma for 20 years and it might not go away. I'm not saying it never helps. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying trauma doesn't usually respond to talking, because the very feature of trauma is that it gets stored down here. And when you're in a trauma, this is why people go into shock, or they kind of disconnect, or because their thinking goes offline. So it's down here. So when we use talk strategies up here, we're not getting to the hippocampus. We're not getting to the activated. It's also stuck in the right brain. So trauma that's not cleared it kind of overwhelms the system. The brain doesn't process it like normal, so we get a lot of body reactions and things like that. So cognitive therapy is not helpful, and medications have not been proven to be helpful. And if you want information on this, I brought a few books. I have a lot of them I wanted to say, but The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk is he's kind of the leading trainer in the field of trauma, and he is a psychiatrist, so he prescribes medication. He was around when Prozac came out, and he said they would notice it would help with, women who just had depression or anxiety or things like this, but then on veterans it didn't work, because there's just some different features of anxiety that medication's not very effective. So if you're dealing with something that's really traumatic, I'm going to talk about some things that I don't know a lot about, but I know that they're talked about in the research. So EMDR with attachment focus, an EMDR is really helpful for trauma. It's the most evidence-based research for resolving trauma because it integrates right and left brain. So EMDR accesses the body, then right brain, left brain, your eyes go back and forth. It helps integrate different parts of the brain. activate different parts of the brain to integrate the memory. And that's really helpful. Body-based interventions. He talks a lot about how yoga is very effective because trauma is stored in the cells, and and so yoga is helpful. After 9/11, one of the things that like when they interviewed people afterward, years after, about PTSD, acupuncture was found to be helpful. So acupuncture, I've heard good things about brain mapping, which does something with the visual field, similar to EMDR, but different. It's newer, not as much research on it, but I've heard from people that it can be really helpful. Neurofeedback sometimes can be helpful. Theater can be very helpful, and with trauma, movement. Because when I said that this stress response is activated in our brain, when something gets activated in our brain like that, we want to be able to complete the motion. And often what happens is we can't do the thing we would need to do. We can't cry loudly, or we're frozen. So there's fight, flight, or freeze. And when kids have trauma especially, they're frozen in it because they can't fight, they can't flight, so they're stuck in it. And that nervous system impulse kind of gets stuck in the body. And so The Body Keeps Score is a good book. It's a very heavy read. I'm just telling you, it's even, even for someone who's a clinician, it's a pretty heavy read. So it's not, It's a great book though. And so just knowing that if it's trauma, you're going to need something probably different than talk strategies. And it doesn't mean it's going to take a long time. I've had people come in with very big traumas, but they were a single incident and it clears very quickly. And I just want to say too, I should have said this in the beginning. I wanted to say that for me personally, I'm a believer, and so faith is a really important part for me of de-stressing and managing anxiety and having strong mental health. I debated about whether or not to incorporate a spiritual component to this, and the reason I decided not to is because a lot of the people I work with are mostly Christians, and I think that they kind of usually have a grasp on that piece of it, and what they're missing is the physiological understanding and these more other environmental things, or things that are more brain-based. And so with all of these strategies, of course, if you are a person of faith and you have you're using those strategies to calm and turn it over and kind of re-script fear, that's really important and it's really good. But also if it's not helping you to calm down, if it's not helping to fix the anxiety, or it's not helping you distress, I want you to understand that it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your faith. I want people to understand that there's all these factors influencing their brain health. So, okay. The other thing is that, so with trauma, movement, theater. I don't know if I mentioned theater, but theater is important. He says that that's a good way of moving through the actions. Like I said, those actions that get stuck in the nervous system. So Sarah says, I missed that, said that in the beginning. So if I said that in the beginning, and if I'm repeating anything, I'm sorry. This is, I'm kind of going through this and trying to watch the time not to keep you too long. Body and brain is the next one. And I don't know if you guys, there were a lot of questions in there, and I wanted to do that because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to physical health. And so I'm going to start talking a little bit about how they are connected, the brain and the body. And I mentioned earlier the vagus nerve goes from here all the way down through our organs, and it's responsible for sending messages up and down. But 80% of the signaling of our vagus nerve is efferent, E-F-F-E-R-E-N-T. And what efferent means is it's listening. So your vagus nerve, 80% of the information goes up from your body up to your brain. So that's why the things that are going on in our physical health have such a huge impact on our brain, on our neurotransmitters, on our connections, on our biochemistry, all of that. There's so much involved. And so if 80% of the communication is going up to your brain and you're working on anxiety and you don't understand this brain-body piece, or nobody's giving you this information, then you're missing a big piece of it. So I want to talk about that. It's really important to get into a relaxed state. You got to understand what's going on in your body. So I mentioned that, earlier in the talk that it was just kind of a paradigm shift when this specialist told me that low-grade systemic inflammation was a key player in chronic anxiety. And I'd never heard that, but it is. And there's plenty of research out on there. It wasn't in the world that I was in, in the trauma and attachment world and that kind of stuff. So inflammation, those low-grade systemic inflammation. So I want you to think about, I don't know if I put this on there, but, one of the things is like, when you get a mosquito bite, does it swell up pretty big, right? Like, do you have a nervous system response? A lot of those in there, fatigue and tiredness. And if you think about, like, your ankle gets sprained, and it swells and blood goes there to protect it so that you don't move it around a lot, and blood goes there to heal it. And then eventually, as it starts to heal, the swelling goes down and it loosens up. And so inflammation is a protective reaction of our body, just like the stress response is a protective reaction in our body. It's inflammation. But what happens when inflammation is turned on all the time is that our body starts to fight against itself. And so autoimmunity and other things, one thing that inflammation is an indication of systemic inflammation is you have good days and bad days. So if you feel like something all the time and it never changes, it doesn't mean you don't have inflammation. But if you really have days where you just can't quite figure it out, with people with arthritis, that's an inflammatory process, right? So people with arthritis, they get exposed to the cold and they go, oh, it's my arthritis, like something's changed, or I ate really badly, or I was walking too much, right? There's something that triggers this inflammation. And so low-grade systemic inflammation in our system is another thing that we really need to be aware of as being part of the equation when it comes to anxiety and our stress response if it's ongoing. Now, if you have a stressful event, you have like a work meeting coming up and you feel stress and you know what it is, and then after that event it calms down, then you're having a normal stress reaction, and maybe there's mindset things, and maybe there are things you need to do to address that. But when we look at these body-brain things, you're going to notice that those kinds of symptoms are symptoms that you're experiencing and you don't quite know why it is, or you feel like, your response to something is bigger than it should be. So these genetic tests that we ended up getting done with my daughter, we do those in our office now. And this whole, I don't do this with clients, like go through this form, but this is the information that I'm gathering as I'm treating them. I'm trying to think about, what was your childhood? What things trigger your anxiety? What makes it worse? What's in your environment? What other health issues do you have going on? Are you on medication for a lot of things? You've been on antidepressants or an anxiety medication for a long time? Trying to gather this information, and if I think that we're doing things around trauma or we're doing things around emotional regulation, then this health piece might not be. Maybe this isn't necessary, but oftentimes there's something that maybe doesn't get totally resolved, and if they're having other kinds of symptoms or sensations in their body or issues, then it's a really good thing to be able to do this. So sometimes people lack enzymes. So there might be an enzyme that you're missing that doesn't allow you to get things into the cell. And again, I am not a genetic specialist. My husband at this point is, but so I can talk about this at a level to help give you information, but it's going to be at the level that I can describe it. So there's several genes that are on a neuropsych panel. And when you do this neuropsych panel or get other genetic testing, what your genes can tell you is what's good for you and what's not, and what your body needs, what your brain needs to work as efficiently as it can and clear toxins and clear stress and get nutrients into the cell and repair the cells. Okay, so our one mistake that we made is about 6 months, no, maybe not. After our daughter's head injury, my husband's, of course, researching all the time because he has kind of a foundation in that and had done a lot of neurological training. He's a chiropractor and knew the food sensitivity stuff and did that, and then had done some neuro training years ago. So he's really researching and listening, and I'm praying like crazy. And I also took an integrative health certification, so that, supplements and mental health. And so through that, I'm learning all about transmitters and vitamins and supplements and nutrition and all these things. So we're like, what do we need to do to get her brain healthy again? What do we need to do to shut off this inflammation? What do we need to do for her? And one of the big things right now, you probably heard, we need methylated vitamins. Everybody's about methylation, and quality vitamins have methylation in them. And so those are really good things. But after we did the genetic testing, and I'm hoping I'm saying this succinctly so that you can understand, what we found out is she can't actually clear methylated vitamins. So that is like putting gasoline on a fire. So there's a lot of things in your genes that you may not know. And so you can research all day long, as we were, like the best things to do. Maybe you're taking a lot of vitamin D because everybody knows that's good. Everybody knows that boosts immunity. But if you're missing an enzyme and you can't get it into the cell, you're going to need K2 with that vitamin D, or else you're not going to be able to absorb it. So there's so much that it would tell you about dietary choices and supplementation that you might not otherwise know. Other things, so genetics is a big thing, and genes either get turned on or off. So we could have a gene for something and maybe it never gets turned on and we're okay, but an event, chronic stress, a sickness, an injury, something turns those genes on, and now we've got this inflammation. Other things that might be impacting anxiety that are in your body would be diseases like thyroid disease, autoimmune conditions, hypertension. Those things can cause anxiety. Hormonal imbalances, people notice a change in their mood with their hormones. So hormonal imbalances can be a big deal when it comes to anxiety. Overall health, what we're eating, which I'm going to include kind of in, I didn't know really whether to put that in the lifestyle or in the health, but I think, what we eat is a big deal. I don't just think that. I know that what we eat is a big deal because, again, 90% of the serotonin that is our kind of like at ease, chemical in our brain is produced in the stomach. So when things aren't okay there, when our gut biome's off, another thing, the vagus nerve goes all the way from the brain all the way down to the gut. Things aren't right in your gut, things are not going to be right in your brain. Just deals off, right? So you really want to know that. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Just got a nice compliment. So GI disturbances, leaky gut, things like that are going on in your body, insulin resistance, how efficiently our cells clean each other, all those things can be influences. So again, if you're stuck and if you've tried things and if you're discouraged, just know that there might be this other area to look. Again, not everybody has to go there. There are a lot of easier fixes than running genetics or doing GI stuff, but it's a game changer if those other things haven't worked for you. So a healthy diet is really important, I would say, with that, and with our health, just being aware that if you have other conditions, oftentimes, and again, it was new information to me, so I wouldn't think about this condition. I wouldn't think about asking clients, do you have this physical condition? Do you have that physical condition? Because to me, they are always separate. Like I was dealing with mental health, they were dealing with physical health issues. I don't know anything about physical health issues, so why would I ask about that? But come to find out that our anxiety is very influenced by those physical health conditions. So if you have those, if you have other things going on in your body and you're having a hard time with stress, or you're getting overwhelmed easy, or you're not sleeping, or your thoughts are racing, or you've got brain fog, or you're feeling overwhelmed a lot, just know that that can be a big piece of it, and that there can be answers for that. So again, recommendations for that are a little bit harder to give because I can't tell you one book to read because it really depends on the issues that you might have, but just knowing that that's an important thing to consider. And of course, there can be differences with this, with the food. We learned that my husband has a lot of autoimmunity. He has Hashimoto, and he did his genetics, and he has a histamine reaction. So we have been gluten, dairy-free. He had been, or not dairy-free totally. He tries to cut down on it, but completely gluten-free really since 2016. And but so you would think like a healthy salad would be good. So, but a spinach salad with avocado and tomatoes, he has a histamine reaction. So that's going to be really activating for him. That's going to cause an anxious fight or flight inflammatory response in his brain because he eats something that would be healthy for other people. So everybody's different. So it's hard to give recommendations for that because I might say, go eat a healthy diet, eat a lot of leafy greens, fruits, and vegetables. You know what? If you have a histamine reaction, that could be activating for you. He's tested people before who had sensitivities to lettuce, who guessed. So it's hard to give a little bit of like across the board recommendations for that. But generally, non-processed foods, more fruits, more vegetables, things like that are just generally going to be better. But if you're having a lot of health issues, you might want to find out what's right for you. Environment and lifestyle. So that's our next section. And life stressors, of course, like those are things that are happening in our environment, right? So even a positive stress like a wedding or a move or a graduation, something like that can be a good stressor, and yet it turns on that response, but it's more likely to not have a negative effect on us. So if we interpret something as positive, for instance, if we're moving, and we have a good mindset around it because we're moving to a new house that we're excited about, that's going to be stressful, but it's going to be more stressful if maybe we're having to move to a new house and we really don't want to because we've just been through a divorce and it was painful, and now we don't want to move and take the kids out of the school they're in. And so the meaning attached to those life stressors has a lot to do with how we experience it. With anxiety, I tell people, like, look around and see if you're safe. So we know anxiety tells you you're not safe. And it's important to look around and know, and we can't do this in the moment. You can't do this when you're in your fear response, but look around, like, am I relatively safe? Is it relatively safe to go to Walmart if it's not Black Friday? Is it relatively safe, and yet my brain's telling me I'm scared to go in public? Are these people that I'm going to be with, even though maybe I'm having social anxiety, are these people generally safe? Or do they make comments, and do they degrade me, and do they say things? Or when I go home for the holidays, is it really tense because there's a lot of things going on in that family environment? So you want to look at, am I safe when I'm removed from that a little bit, or I've had trusted friends or trusted counsel that can say, like, here's the situation. Is it safe? Is it not? Establishing safety is important when we look at our environment. And then we want to look at things like, how many stressors are coming in at me? How much noise is there in my environment? How much light is there? How much am I multitasking? This is not good. Sorry, I got to turn this notification off. It's telling me my battery's low, so hopefully we're going to get through this. How much activation is my brain having? Because anxiety keeps us busy. Anybody else notice that your mind is very, very busy? If you're a woman, I think our minds are very, very busy. So multitasking actually is really not good for anxiety. The whole be still and know that I'm God, like being still, there's really something to that, to being still and knowing that we can calm our thoughts. So when I am, feeling on edge and I've got a lot of stress going on, I will just, I'll make an attempt to really quiet things. I started meditation a couple months ago. That's been really helpful. I'm going to talk about that a little bit just briefly, but that's very helpful in stilling your mind, and reducing the noise is really important. So like, even though I love the radio, everybody's saying yes, we have busy minds, yeah, and we want to be able to use our minds for the good things. We want to be creative and engaging, and when we're stuck in anxiety, our mind is busy with the what ifs, and the what ifs are really taxing on us. So reducing the noise, reducing the stimulation. Sleep is very important. You know, people say, oh, I only need 5 or 6 hours. Not very many people only need 5 or 6 hours. We really need more than that. So having good routines about sleep, having good routines about how we use blue light, there's a lot we can do to reduce the stress. And if we think of stress as cumulative, right, the more we pack on, it can be just a little pebble and a little pebble and a little pebble, but the accumulation of it makes us overwhelmed. So looking at what we eat, how we sleep, you know, are we eating a lot of MSG? Are we, you know, dosing up on caffeine because we're so tired? Do we have trouble saying no? Setting boundaries, so we're taking on a lot of things and we're demanding a lot of ourselves. All of those things can be really anxiety producing. And so one of the strategies with your environment and lifestyle needs to be to really be able to establish patterns that make brain health and mental health part of your hygiene. So like, we don't go, oh my gosh, I have a cavity, I'm gonna have to brush tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Like, we just brush our teeth and floss, hoping that those habits will keep us, our gums and teeth, healthy, right? Anybody else like to brush and floss their teeth? Okay, so same thing has to do with mental health. We need to have habits that detox stress, because as I mentioned earlier, it's a constant stream. We're never going to get to a place where it's like, oh, I don't have any more stressors coming in, I guess I can just ignore that. We should have habits built in our life that help us de-stress. Laughter, connection with other people, routines, quiet, sleep, healthy diet, and those things don't have to be hard. They don't even have to take much time, right? Once we incorporate them, it's being aware and knowing what we can do to do that. And like I said, I don't really have time, I think, to talk too much about go into all these strategies in depth. But meditation, stilling our mind, I used to really stay away from that because I was like, oh, it's a little bit Eastern. It may not be in congruence with my personal beliefs, and I found that it's perfectly in line, because when I meditate, I just use the name of Jesus, and you can use whatever mantra fits for you, but it's the practice of being able to still your mind. And the more we do that, any of these things, ladies, any of these things that we do repeatedly, we're not just doing it one time, we are building neural networks. You are changing your brain. You're changing the way it fires. You're changing your nervous system. You are creating better health, better mental health, better physical health. And so, yeah, you might not just do it one time. You might do it one time and relax. I can help people usually relax within a few minutes in my office. But whether or not we do them repeatedly, as being part of, proactive, just healthy, it just helps us on an everyday basis. So that can be a really helpful strategy. I know it's really helped me a lot during this time. I, had some stressful things, and that's okay. My stressful things are no harder than anybody else's stressful things, but it really helps us detox that stress as we go along. If you can think about consuming stress every day and detoxing stress every day, and consuming and de-stressing. And then mindset. Our thought life is really important, and I know I don't really like Dr. Caroline Leaf. I know some of you may follow her. She's a neuroscientist. She talks a lot about thought life and how important it is. And I agree, because our thought structures have actual physical structures in our brain. They're columnized. They leave our body in a relaxed state. So rest and digest our thoughts. The meaning we attach to things is huge. But the reason I included it last, and the reason I think a lot of people get stuck, I really think a lot of people get stuck here, is because if you are in overdrive down here, if your stress response is turned on, if you're having real anxiety or panic, your thoughts are not going to be useful. So what we want to do And eventually these top brain thoughts, if we have them enough, they eventually get down here, right? They get down here into our automatic. But has anybody ever had the experience of they're like, I know this up here, but I don't feel it down here. I know I'm safe, but I feel terrified. I know God loves me, but I feel worthless. I know, right? We know something, but we don't feel it. So this is because down here in our memory, like I said, we have automatic thoughts, automatic negative thoughts. Oh, thank you. Melissa brought my charger. She opened the door. It scared me. So these thoughts up here, we do want to restructure those, but we have to be able to observe those. And so down here, when our amygdala is activated, our stress response, we're not able to really observe our thoughts the way that we need to change them. So I really like with clients to teach them regulation strategies to calm their nervous system in the moment, but just on a daily basis, because once you can calm, then you can be a little bit more reasonable, right? Once you can calm, then you can observe the thoughts. Where did that come from? Why do I believe that? Why is this so scary? And then eventually you can get it down here. But it's not going to happen just like that because somebody tells you you should think different, or because you tell yourself you should think different, or because you speak affirmations into the mirror, because you're doing that from up here. You're doing it from your reasoning brain. This is what I think, but this is what I know. This is what your body says. This is what I know. And you have to get what you think down to what you know for it to really be then a core belief. So hope that makes sense. So that's why I include mindset last, because I think there's some key important mindset things to start at the beginning to say, this is why I'm going to do these things. This is why I'm going to practice. This is why this is important. This is why I can absolutely get through this. This is why I can absolutely change this, that you have control. You have agency over your own mental health, means you can impact it. You can impact your brain health. But other thoughts that are like these, we have thoughts, conscious thoughts are up here. This is what we know is there. This is what do I think, what do I believe, what do I remember on a conscious level. So think about 3 layers. Then we have subconscious thoughts. Subconscious thoughts are thoughts like, like my friend Janelle, when I gave the experience for getting on the plane, right? She knew that subconscious thought or memory was there, but she wasn't accessing, she wasn't making the connection. So we can go down and we can retrieve them. And that's where a lot of thought work is really, that's where it really comes from, on these 3rd levels, from getting, we have up here thinking brain, then we have subconscious thoughts, and then we have unconscious thoughts. Unconscious thoughts you can't retrieve on your own. Subconscious thoughts, a lot of that's where therapy is. The therapist is saying, what do you think about that? Well, where did that come from? When else in your life might have that been activated? What other experience reminds you of that? And then the person pulls it up and we go, oh, what do you think about that now? And, do all that fun stuff. And I think it's fun. It's very fun to me. But down here, unconscious thoughts, those can come spontaneously up through EMDR, hypnosis, but we can't intentionally retrieve unconscious, repressed thoughts. But we can get to them if we need to, and they can be brought up, and sometimes you can work on them, and you get relief even if you don't know that they're there. So that's kind of what that's why I think thought work is very important. Mindset, always check your mindset. Always know that every thought you have creates a reaction in your body. Every thought you have creates an emotional response. So thoughts are absolutely 110% important and a huge, huge deal. I just don't think they're the very first order of business. Usually when I see people in my office, they've done a lot of thought work. They're reading the self-help books, they're doing the Bible studies, they're talking to friends, they're getting on blogs, they're consuming information, and they are so prepped to be able to get up here, down to here, because they've already got it. They've just got it in a vault that really isn't getting to the core of the issue, or they've got some other things going on, health things, or maybe it is mindset. Maybe you came from a family where you just learned that everything was fearful and you were afraid of everything, and you were taught to be afraid, or you were heavily criticized. So there's a lot of things that we can look at in mindset that really are very impactful. I just tend to do it after people have some regulation. I want them to be able to get out the door or face that scary thing or move into that fear or calm their emotions, so that when we get into the mindset stuff, it sticks a little bit more. So those, that's kind of an overview of the things that contribute to anxiety. Activating your vagus nerve. This is another book. I've read it. It's pretty good. Navaz Habib. Activating your vagus nerve. Boundaries. I love this book for emotional regulation and setting boundaries with people. Whole Brain Child. This kind of helps understand that emotional regulation piece and how co-regulation happens in the brain. So there's so many good resources. You can work on this stuff alone. I hope that the information I've given you tonight, I hope by looking at this, you kind of have an idea of some things that might be impactful or useful for you. And in that way, you would, try to find resources and do that. And there's a lot of great information on the internet and in books and other resources. If you're interested in, and I hope tonight helped you, it just give you a little bit of hope and ideas about things you might be able to try and pursue. I do in therapy, in-person therapy, I do a lot of EMDR and trauma-based and anxiety resolution. We also have a program that can either be done, I developed an online program, an online course that involves coaching, and you can get that with or without the genetic testing. So there's a piece of it where the course takes you basically through all these things, through routines, through emotional regulation, through self-compassion, through calming, through observational mindset, through mindset, all of the things, step by step by step by step, 6 to 8 week course that you go through. And there's probably 6 lessons in each on average. And it starts out with the anxiety audit and a consultation with me, so we can talk about how to get the very most out of it. But it's a step by step, something that you would log on online and do. And then there's the option with or without the consultation. If you feel like you've got a lot of physical health stuff going on, I just can't really recommend the genetics enough. But there will be a consultation with my husband, and then testing, and then 30-day, 60-day, 90-day follow-up with him on supplements and getting the health stuff under control. So if you're interested in any help from us on kind of, holding your hand and walking you through that step by step through that process, that course, and getting through your anxiety, you can schedule. And I told Melissa Zook, who's my administrative assistant, she's going to be scheduling a 20-minute phone consultation with me if you want to discuss either of those programs, either with or without the health component. But if you want the course, I was introduced to courses and online stuff when we were looking for help for my daughter, and so I think this is a way that I can help people in more than a one-on-one setting. So I'm hoping that it's useful. And so anyway, if you want that 20-minute consultation, feel free to give us a call, and I'll set up a phone call with you and go over what some of the options might be, and lead you as best I can to an option that might be best for you if you need help walking through any of this. And now I'm going to open it up for any questions. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer for you on any of the things that we talked tonight? I'll do my best to give you. Thank you. Some people are saying it's helpful. Good. I'm so glad it was helpful. Does anybody have any questions about any of these areas or anything that I didn't cover? I know I didn't go through any of the questions because there's so many I would have never gotten through it. But do you have any questions about any of the things that were in the audit that maybe didn't make sense, or that you need a little bit more clarification or explanation on? Okay, this is an eye-opener, helpful. Okay. I don't see any questions coming up. Melissa, do you have any questions that came to you? Okay. Nobody has any questions. One question that I get asked a lot, so I don't know if it's one of your questions, maybe nobody has questions, is that what if you have things in a lot of different areas? And that can be really the case, that we have a lot of things impacting us. If we had a lot of childhood things, then we are more likely to have other things come on if we have health issues. But I think one of the things to keep in mind is that you really need to go step by step and calming your nervous system, little pieces at a time, little daily activities, vagus nerve activation, those starting with some of those bottom brain based strategies can really kind of give you a foundation, and you're just going to keep building kind of one skill on top of the other, and you'll find that when you get movement in one area, like when you learn self-compassion and emotional regulation, if that was an issue, that you can stop some of the avoidance. And then once you're in a calm state, if you can learn, calming your nervous system, you can observe more because you have other parts of your brain online. And if you have health issues and you get some of those calm, some of the things that, your brain is perceiving or a threat all of a sudden feel less scary to you. So taking things one step at a time is really my recommendation for that. Another thing I get asked a lot is about medication, and I don't prescribe medication because I'm not qualified to prescribe medication. Sometimes it's needed, but I haven't seen a lot of people who've taken medication for a long time who feel great. And so medication, there's no testing before or after medication. So there's no way of, they're giving you medication based on symptoms, not based on any objective testing of serotonin or dopamine. And so it can have some negative side effects, and they really don't know exactly what they're giving you. There is a genetic panel on pharmaceuticals that can tell you if you would need an SSRI, and if you would, which ones would be good for you, which would work with your biochemistry, which wouldn't. If you are on medication, don't get off of it abruptly because it's hard to get off of, and really needs to be weaned down. But I don't see medication as fixing the problem. I see it as something that's needed sometimes to bridge until somebody can learn the regulatory strategies and get the brain health. But remind me ways to stimulate the vagus. Okay. Okay. No, the online course is not on my Facebook page. I do have a separate portal for it, but yeah, and someone said trial and error of meds is rough and takes a long time to know, right? I just don't, and there's a lot of research on that it's really just not good for your brain long term, that, you kind of develop, your other parts of your brain kind of shut down as you're getting that synthetic serotonin or whatever, and so then there's a medication to combat, symptoms of a medication. Okay, what does meditation look like to me? Okay, wait, hold on. Trial and error meds. Okay, vagus nerve activation. There's a lot of strategies. You can deep breathing. I'm going to say deep breathing is probably the foundational thing that everybody needs to learn. 20 minutes of deep breathing a day will change your brain over a 15-week period if you do it consistently 20 minutes a day. So deep diaphragmatic breathing, the exhale being more important than the inhale. The inhale excites us, the exhale relaxes our body. So deep breathing activates our vagus nerve. Laying with your legs up the wall, flat on your back, legs straight up the wall, will activate a vagus nerve response. And so doing that, there are many, many strategies. Those are all included in the course, but those are some basics. But yes, when we activate our vagus nerve, it activates a parasympathetic nervous response, and our brain kind of goes. And the more we can get into that parasympathetic rest and digest, the better we're training our brains. You want to think about, like, if you play piano, you played it again and again, you don't have to look at your fingers, right? Because you develop muscle memory, you develop neural networks. We want to have neural networks for parasympathetic nervous response. So vagus nerve activation is really, really important. What does meditation look like for you? So a certain amount of time you spend. Do you read first? I've had similar concerns as you did, so I was intrigued to hear what you're finding helpful. I'm glad you shared. Okay, thank you. I meditate 15 minutes in the morning, and I read a book called Stress Less, Accomplish More, and by Emily Fletcher, and it was helpful on meditation because she just made it really simple. So I do it 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, and basically it's just trying to still your mind to one thought and not get distracted, and just notice when you go off on another thought and bring it back. So multitasking has us checking our phone, checking our computer, watching the kids, doing this, and our brains are very frazzled and distracted. And so training your brain to be still and focus on one thing at a time. Another thing is mindfulness. I can't go into all the strategies, but so meditation helps us clear stress from the past, and kind of at a cellular level as our system calms, really helps our nervous system in all kinds of wonderful ways. Mindfulness is being present in the moment, because with anxiety, usually our thoughts are forward or backward, right? What if this, what if that, and then replaying. Oh my gosh, did I say this? Did I do this? What did I do? Just replaying things or fast forwarding. And so mindfulness is about attending to what's here right in this moment. What do I feel, see, taste, touch? A lot of things we can do with sensory integration to help keep us in the moment and notice how our bodies are responding to that moment. So I hope that answers your question. Melissa knows me so well because I can't see when I don't have my glasses on, so she's made the print like this big. So I think I've answered all of the questions, unless anybody has any more. Okay. Just wait another minute or two. If anybody has any more questions, feel free to ask. And if you don't, I hope that you found something helpful tonight. I hope it encourages you. I love to see people just be able to break free from anxiety and stress and live a little bit freer and have a little bit more of their mind focused on what they can do and enjoy, rather than being caught up in their head all the time. So hope it was helpful. And if you have any other questions, or you want that 20-minute consultation, just let Melissa know and she'll schedule in a time, and we can just do that by phone. And if you need any more resources or anything like that, feel free to reach out. And thanks so much for being here. I hope you all have a great evening, and thanks again. I'll close it up now, and I think I just put finish, but where do we learn more about the course and maybe sign up? I have a portal for that, so if you just want to do that consultation with me, because I've got 3 levels. I have one that's just very entry level, like vagus nerve activation, de-stress project. It's that bottom brain. I have another one that's the comprehensive of, the 6 to 8 week module with everything in it, and then we have one with the genetic consultation. So if you are interested and you want to just schedule that 20-minute phone call with me, we could talk about like what your needs would be and figure out what would be best for you. What's a typical treatment for low-grade inflammation? That would depend on you, on what's turning the inflammation on. So, if there were dietary things, there are some things that are prescribed commonly for low-grade inflammation, CBD oil, low-dose naltrexone, but also those things might be dietary, like maybe MSG, dairy, or gluten. I'm sorry, this is another question someone put in there, what's typical treatment for low-grade inflammation? So dietary changes, supplements for getting in, so it would depend on what supplementation you needed based on your system. So like if somebody, like my daughter has a COMT gene variation where she doesn't clear cortisol, she doesn't clear estrogen, so like migraines, panic, she doesn't have panic, but that is one of the things that comes from that. There's other things that might lead people to have PCOS or hormonal imbalances, so supplementation based on where the inflammation is. And again, if that's inflammation, some people are really sensitive to electromagnetic forces. So, there might be things like they have to, get devices away for them, or you might have to wear blue light glasses and reduce the stimulation. But inflammation is basically anything that turns on that fight or flight. And so we look at a biochemical level, as well as dietary, exercise. Different types of exercise are good for different types of conditions that we have in our body. But anything that we do that turns off, and vagus nerve activation. Vagus nerve activation is very good for reducing inflammation. Gut issues, addressing gut issues, through gut biome, that's another way that we impact inflammation in the body. And I hate to speak too much about that because I'm just not the health specialist, other than having been a mom through health journeys for the last 2 years with this, but then 5 years beyond that, so a lot that I've learned through that experience. But as far as advising of your health, that depends a lot on your health. So no, I don't only see women, I see women and men. I don't think there were any men on there. Internet has been spotty for me, especially. Do we have a replay? I think you'll have a replay, but this is the very first time I've done an event like this, so I'm not 100% sure. I think Melissa was going to try to save it, and I think we will. And if you want that, just put a note in there, and I'll just jot your name down and tell her to email it to you if you want that. So yeah, I think we'll be able to send that. Yeah. So, and no, I don't only see women, I see men too. I will see people 16 years and older, although I prefer adults. I have some teenagers I just love. But generally I see adults, men and women, on an individual basis. I used to do a lot of marriage. I don't do as much marriage anymore. So primarily individual adults. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'm not seeing. Okay. Okay. I'm seeing some people want a replay, so okay. I'll probably just have, I see that I'll have these comments on there, I think, and so I'm jotting down your names, and I will have Melissa send those to you if she is able to. So, okay, well, thank you, ladies, so much for coming. I say ladies because I think you're all ladies. Thanks so much for coming and being here. I appreciate your support, and I hope this information is helpful to you. Please let me know if you have any further questions or if there's any resource that I can point you to. And if you happen to want help along this journey, I'd be happy to help you and look forward to seeing you inside the course. So have a great evening. Have a nice Tuesday night, and I'll just talk to you soon. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your support. All right. I'm going to shut off now. Bye.